Centuries passed, and humanity was no longer the fragile species that had once clung to failing ships near dying stars. The age of desperation was gone. Now their vessels crossed the galaxy with confidence. Their colonies stretched across hundreds of systems, from frozen moons to warm golden worlds rich in life. Their fleets were spoken of with caution, their technology respected, their determination feared. The humans had grown into a people the galaxy could not ignore. They were not the strongest in raw power, but they were the most stubborn. They adapted to every challenge. Where others saw defeat, humans saw opportunity. Where others grew comfortable, humans pressed forward. They had become a force that reshaped the balance of power across the stars. But while humanity had risen, not every race shared the same fortune. The Thalren, once the quiet saviors of a forgotten human ship, had begun to decline. They were never a mighty people, but they had lived in peace, content with their small corner of the galaxy. They valued compassion, dialogue, and patience. These qualities, once respected, became weaknesses in an age of competition and conquest. Stronger empires turned their eyes upon the Thalren worlds. Taxes were demanded. Fleets were dismantled. Colonies were stripped of resources. The Thalren protested, but their voices were drowned out in the great council chambers. In time, their dignity was mocked openly. Soft-hearted dreamers, one rival ambassador sneered. Caretakers of nothing, another declared. Better that they serve those with strength, a third added. And so the Thalren endured. Their worlds grew poorer, their people weary. Yet still they kept to their old ways. Even when they had little, they shared. Even when they suffered, they offered aid to strangers. It was who they were, though few saw value in it anymore. But there was one race that remembered. Across the human colonies, the story of the Horizon Dawn and the Thalren rescue had never faded. It was retold in schools, printed in archives, and sung in quiet songs on distant frontier worlds. To humans, it was not simply a moment in history, it was a promise. They had been saved once when they were weak. That act of kindness had become a seed planted in human memory. Generations passed, yet the seed only grew stronger. Admirals spoke of it in their oaths. Leaders repeated it in speeches. Even simple families whispered it as a lesson. Kindness is never forgotten. The galaxy, however, paid little attention. To most, humans were ambitious and dangerous, a people who climbed too quickly and grasped too tightly. They could not imagine that humans, of all races, would hold loyalty to a minor people like the Thalren. And so the day came when the galaxy was proven wrong. The empire known as the Zerak Dominion turned its gaze upon the Thalren homeworld. The Zerak were vast, proud, and merciless. Their fleets numbered in the thousands, their armies in the millions. They claimed worlds not because they needed them, but because they could. To them, the Thalren were weak neighbors, easy prey, incapable of resistance. On the floor of the Galactic Council, the Thalren ambassador stood and pleaded. His voice trembled but remained steady. The Zerak Dominion prepares to invade our home. We ask for protection. We ask for justice. Laughter filled the chamber. The other empires turned away, unwilling to anger the Dominion for the sake of a powerless race. Justice is for those who can claim it, one counselor scoffed. Better to surrender now, another advised. No one will risk war for the Thalren, the Zerak ambassador said coldly. The Thalren returned home in silence. Their leaders prepared for the worst. Fleets were assembled, though they were too small to matter. Families dug shelters, though they knew they could not withstand orbital fire. The Thalren prepared to be erased from the stars. But far away on Earth's shining capital world, the message of their plea had reached human ears. The Council of Humanity gathered in their great chamber. Old admirals and young statesmen sat side by side, listening as the reports came in. The Zerak Dominion planned to crush the Thalren within weeks. Some at the table spoke cautiously. Perhaps it is not our fight. The Thalren are distant. Our trade with them is small. The Dominion is powerful. We should not provoke them lightly. But then an older woman rose. She was the daughter of explorers, the granddaughter of soldiers. Her voice carried across the chamber with calm fire. Centuries ago, she began. When we were helpless and alone, the Thalren risked everything to save us. They gained nothing from it. They asked nothing in return. Yet they gave us life when the galaxy had abandoned us. And now, when they stand at the edge of destruction, do you suggest we look away? The chamber fell silent. Every human in that room knew the story. Every human carried the weight of that memory. "We are not the kind of people who forget," she said softly. "If we abandon the Thalrin now, then we abandon what makes us human." The vote was called, and the decision was made. In the weeks that followed, the great shipyards of humanity stirred with life. Fleets gathered from every colony, their banners bright against the dark. Warships of all sizes aligned in disciplined formation. Soldiers drilled with quiet determination. The humans did not speak of conquest. They did not speak of riches. They spoke only of loyalty. Across the stars, whispers began. "The humans are moving," but the galaxy dismissed it. Surely humanity would not risk itself for a race as small as the Thalrin. Surely it was a bluff. The Xerac Dominion, proud and arrogant, prepared to crush the Thalrin homeworld. They expected no resistance. Their fleets gathered like a storm, confident in their numbers. And on the Thalrin world itself, families waited in dread. Children were hidden in caves. Cities went silent. Leaders gave farewell speeches. The Thalrin knew they had no chance. They waited only for the fire to fall, but then the stars began to change. One by one, new signals appeared on long-range scanners. At first, the Thalrin thought it was another wave of Xerac ships. But then the identifications came through. They were not Xerac. They were human. The skies above the Thalrin world filled with vessels, sleek and massive, their engines burning like suns. Entire battle groups appeared, more than the Thalrin had ever imagined. The humans had not come quietly, nor in half measures. They had come with their full strength, and with them came a single message, sent across every channel in every language of the galaxy. Long ago, the message began. "When humanity was weak, the Thalrin saved us. Today we return that kindness. Today we remember." The Xerac Dominion had prepared for an easy conquest. Their fleets moved like predators, sleek warships painted in the crimson of victory. To them, the Thalrin were prey with no defenders. The invasion was meant to be a display of power, another mark of dominance for their empire. But when they arrived, they found the skies above the Thalrin homeworld already filled. The fleets of humanity stretched across the void in tight formation. Carriers as large as cities, destroyers bristling with weapons, cruisers lined in disciplined ranks. The humans had come not with a token force, but with everything they could bring. Their ships gleamed with new alloys, their engines burned steady, and their banners carried the emblem of Earth and her colonies. The Thalrin, watching from the surface, could only stare in disbelief. Never had they seen such power arrayed for their sake. Families crowded in shelters, gazing upward as the night sky glittered with the shapes of human ships. A child whispered to her mother, "Are they here to save us?" The mother, tears in her eyes, whispered back, "Yes." The Xerac commander, Admiral Karoth Vare, sent his message across the channels. His voice was filled with disdain. "Humans, stand aside. This world belongs to the Dominion now. You cannot challenge us." On the bridge of the human flagship, Admiral Elias Wren stood tall. His voice, when it answered, carried across the stars with quiet power. "This world belongs to its people, and long ago they saved us when no one else would. We will not forget. If you want the Thalrin, you must come through us." Silence followed, then laughter. The Xerac fleet spread out, their numbers vast. To them, humanity's stand was madness. They had crushed greater foes. They believed the humans were blinded by sentiment, unable to match the Dominion's sheer strength. And then the battle began. The Xerac fired first, a storm of plasma and kinetic fire racing across the void. But the humans were ready. Shields flared, formations shifted, and human ships moved with coordination that stunned their enemies. Where the Xerac struck, the humans bent but did not break. Where the Xerac pressed forward, the humans countered with speed and cunning. Admiral Wren gave his orders calmly, his eyes fixed on the flow of the battle. "Hold the line. Protect the Thalrin world. No ship breaks through." Human destroyers darted ahead, striking like knives at the flanks of the Xerac formations. Carriers launched waves of fighters, swarming in disciplined arcs that tore at enemy hulls. Cruisers laid down walls of fire, forcing the Xerac to divide their forces. For every human ship destroyed, 2 more pressed forward. For every blow struck, the humans answered with greater force. They fought not for conquest, not for riches, but for a promise. That promise burned in every soldier's heart, in every captain's command. On the surface, the Thalrin watched the sky flicker with fire. Explosions painted the night in colors of war. But amid the fear was awe. The humans were fighting for them, truly for them. It was something the Thalren had never imagined. Admiral Karath grew furious.
"They fight like zealots," he snarled.
Break their line. But the Zerak could not. Humanity's stubbornness was unmatched. Even when ships were battered, even when odds were grim, they held. Crews sang old songs as they fought, songs of Earth and the colonies, songs that spoke of loyalty and remembrance. Hours passed. The battle stretched on. The Zerak fleets, though vast, began to falter. They had not expected resistance so fierce nor tactics so adaptive. Humans turned every weakness into strength. Damaged ships became decoys. Broken fleets regrouped into traps. Fighters sacrificed themselves to protect carriers. It was a storm of courage that the Dominion had never faced. At last, the turning point came. The human flagship, the Iron Resolve, broke through the Zerak center with a desperate charge. Its guns blazed, its shields burned, but it held long enough for the rest of the human fleet to surge forward. The Zerak lines shattered. Panic rippled through their ranks. Admiral Wren's voice cut through the chaos. "Now drive them back!" With renewed fury, the humans pressed the attack. One by one, Zerak warships fell, their proud formations collapsing. What had begun as certain victory for the Dominion turned into retreat, and when the order finally came, it was Karath himself who gave it. "Withdraw. This battle is lost." The Zerak fleets pulled back, limping away in disgrace. The Thalren homeworld was safe. When the last enemy ship vanished into the void, silence filled the human fleet. Then came cheers, not of conquest but of relief. Humanity had held the line. They had kept their promise. On the surface, Thalren leaders gathered in their council hall. Their faces glowed with disbelief and gratitude. For generations they had been forgotten, mocked, dismissed. But humanity had remembered. Humanity had stood for them when no one else would. Ambassador Sarai Thal spoke with tears in her eyes. Why risk so much for us?" Admiral Wren, when asked the same question, gave the same answer that had been spoken centuries before. Because someone had to, and because one day you would do the same. The galaxy, watching from afar, could not believe what had happened. Humans had fought a war not for territory, not for wealth, but for honor. Such a thing was rare, almost unthinkable. The story spread like wildfire. In council chambers, in trade stations, in hidden corners of the galaxy, one truth was spoken again and again. The humans do not forget. For the Thalren, it was salvation. For the Dominion, it was humiliation. And for humanity, it was the fulfillment of a promise made long ago, when a single patrol ship had pulled a fragile explorer from the jaws of a dying star. But the story was not over. The galaxy had seen humanity's loyalty. Now it would see the consequences. The skies above the Thalren world had cleared, leaving trails of debris and burning wreckage drifting in the void. Silence filled the surface, broken only by the hum of repair drones and the quiet whispers of Thalren citizens. Their homeworld had survived, but the cost of the battle was evident. Cities were scarred, fleets were shattered, and fear still lingered in the hearts of the people. Yet hope now burned brighter than ever. Humans had come and fought not for profit, not for glory, but for a promise long forgotten by others. Their presence had shifted something fundamental across the galaxy. Admiral Elias Wren and his fleet remained in orbit, overseeing the immediate recovery. Human engineers worked alongside Thalren technicians, repairing damaged stations and ships. Medical teams treated civilians and injured personnel alike, providing care without distinction. It was an act of service that the Thalren had never experienced on such a scale. On the planet's surface, Sarai Thal, the Thalren ambassador, moved among her people. She marveled at the humans' dedication and their quiet discipline. Despite their overwhelming power, they did not flaunt it. They did not demand tribute or loyalty. They offered only assistance. "They are different from the others," she whispered to her council members. "Not because they are strong, but because they remember." Indeed, the galaxy began to take notice. Transmission networks across hundreds of star systems carried news of the human intervention. The Zerak Dominion's failure became a point of humiliation, their arrogance exposed. Merchants, diplomats, and scholars debated endlessly. How could one species, still relatively young in the stars, possess such unyielding resolve? In the council chambers of the Zerak Dominion, discussions turned into arguments. "How did this happen?" demanded a commander. "They were supposed to be weak, insignificant." "They fought for something greater than themselves," an elder diplomat replied. "They fought for loyalty, for memory. That is a power you do not understand. Elsewhere, other galactic powers began to reconsider their relationships with humanity. Traders and colonies who had long dismissed humans now sought alliances. It was not just military strength that made them valuable. It was the certainty that humans kept their word. That trait, rare among the stars, suddenly became the most respected quality in a potential ally. Back on the Thalran homeworld, reconstruction began in earnest. Human architects shared designs that were decades beyond standard Thalran technology. Hospitals, schools, and energy grids were rebuilt with efficiency and care. For the first time in generations, the Thalran felt a sense of stability. Children played in streets still littered with debris, laughing with the humans who helped rebuild their homes. Captain Sarath Valan, now older and respected across the Thalran worlds, met with Admiral Wren aboard the Iron Resolve. The two men shared a quiet conversation, free from the pressures of command. "You have done more than save a planet," Sarath said. "You have given hope to an entire people." Admiral Wren shook his head. "We did only what we should have. A promise made long ago is not something to break. Humanity does not forget." Their words were simple, yet they carried weight. For the Thalran, it was a lesson that would echo through generations. Kindness, no matter how small or forgotten, can shape destinies. Meanwhile, the Zarak Dominion struggled to recover. Their defeat had weakened them politically, economically, and morally. Many of their allies abandoned them, fearing retaliation from humanity. For the first time, they understood that power in the galaxy was not measured only by fleets or weapons, but by loyalty, courage, and reputation. The humans, however, did not pursue vengeance. They did not claim territory or demand compensation. They had no interest in domination. Their message was clear. They fought to protect a life debt, not for gain. This restraint impressed other civilizations. Diplomatic channels, once cautious or hostile to humans, opened in ways that had never happened before. Treaties were proposed, alliances reconsidered, and trade routes expanded. Humanity's influence now reached beyond their fleets. They had become a moral as well as a military force in the galaxy. Yet the struggle was far from over. Many systems still doubted the humans' intentions. Some feared that loyalty alone could not sustain power. Others wondered if the human sense of duty might someday be exploited. Humanity knew these doubts would take time to dissolve. For now, their focus remained on the Thalran, whose recovery was fragile but full of promise. The Thalran scientists began integrating human technology with their own, discovering solutions to energy shortages and environmental degradation. Human teachers trained Thalran students, sharing knowledge of the stars and the techniques that had allowed humanity to thrive despite adversity. The exchange was mutual. Humans learned from the Thalran's patience, empathy, and deep understanding of life. It was a relationship that transformed both species. In the political halls of the galaxy, whispers of fear and admiration spread. Human loyalty had become a factor that no empire could ignore. Treaties now included clauses acknowledging that humanity would act to protect allies. Merchants calculated new risks. Scholars wrote analyses on the psychology of humans, how memory, compassion, and tenacity could become tools of power more potent than fleets of warships. On the Thalran world, a festival was declared in honor of the humans. Streets were decorated with banners, children danced in human-designed costumes, and songs told the story of the Horizon Dawn and the fleet that had returned centuries later. It was a celebration not of victory in war, but of the human spirit and the value of remembering kindness. Amid the festivities, Admiral Wren stood with his officers. They watched as Thalran citizens laughed, embraced, and thanked them, though words were not enough to capture the depth of gratitude. "We did what we must," he said softly. "The rest is theirs to feel." Even as celebrations continued, humanity prepared for the future. The galaxy had changed. The Zarak Dominion, once feared, would never again challenge humanity without consequence. Other empires now knew that the humans' reach extended far beyond their own territories. Every star system had reason to respect their will and their memory. For the Thalran, the intervention was a turning point. They were no longer a people likely to be erased or mocked. They had allies who remembered, who acted without hesitation, and whose power matched their promise. Their homeworld would flourish again, not as a victim of history, but as a partner with humanity. And for humanity, the lesson endured. Acts of kindness, No matter how small or forgotten by others, are never truly lost. They echo through time, shaping destinies, creating alliances, and reminding all that strength is not measured only by weapons or fleets but by loyalty, courage, and the willingness to act when it matters most. As night fell on the Thalrin world, the stars above seemed to shine a little brighter. Ships of humanity glimmered in orbit, silent sentinels of memory kept and promises honored. On the surface, Thalrin children looked up, their eyes wide with wonder, imagining a future where kindness and bravery could overcome even the greatest challenges. The galaxy watched and began to understand. Humans were different. They were unpredictable, relentless, and capable of actions no one else would dare. They remembered kindness. They repaid debts. They fought not for glory but for what was right. And in that moment, the seeds of respect, caution, and awe were planted across the stars. Humanity's struggle was not over, but their place in the galaxy was no longer in question. The Thalrin had been saved, the Zirak humbled, and the galaxy reminded that the smallest acts of compassion could ignite the greatest changes. The story of the Horizon Dawn and the fleets that followed would become legend, not just for the Thalrin, but for every civilization that came to understand the unique strength of humanity. The Thalrin homeworld had survived the storm of war, but survival was only the first step. The planet was scarred, fleets broken, cities damaged, and trust in the galaxy shattered. Yet in every Thalrin heart burned a single truth. Humanity had not abandoned them. Admiral Elias Wren watched the planet from orbit aboard the Iron Resolve, his mind calm but alert. He had led his fleets through battle, seen courage beyond measure, and witnessed the galaxy's perception of humans shift forever. But the mission was not complete. The final act of repayment, the true honor of their promise, was only beginning. Human engineers and Thalrin architects worked together, designing systems that were decades beyond the Thalrin's previous technology. Starports were rebuilt, capable of handling fleets twice the size of the old ports. Energy grids were redesigned to provide clean, abundant power. Cities once filled with fear were now alive with light and movement. Schools reopened with human instructors alongside Thalrin teachers, sharing knowledge of science, strategy, and history. Yet technology alone was not enough. Humanity understood that the Thalrin needed more than tools. They needed trust, confidence, and proof that their survival was no accident. Humans did not merely rebuild, they empowered. Thalrin engineers learned to operate new systems. Students mastered advanced navigation, communication, and planetary defense technologies. Farmers and workers were taught methods to improve food production, energy efficiency, and environmental restoration. Sarai Thal walked among the Thalrin citizens, marveling at the transformation. Children ran through streets where rubble once lay, laughter echoing over repaired plazas. Families gathered in public squares, waving at human ships in orbit. The Thalrin had been saved once, but now they were thriving, growing stronger with every day. Captain Sarath Valan, now older and respected as a legendary leader, met with Admiral Wren on the surface of the planet. They looked out over the main city, a masterpiece of combined ingenuity. "You have done more than repay a debt," Sarath said. "You have changed the destiny of our people." Admiral Wren shook his head. "We only remembered what was done for us long ago. It is not a debt to repay, it is a bond. A bond that time and the stars cannot erase." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the consequences of humanity's actions began to ripple. The Zirak Dominion, once a fearsome empire, was humbled beyond repair. Other races who had doubted humanity's loyalty now respected it deeply. Treaties were rewritten, alliances reconsidered, and trade routes expanded in ways that had been impossible before. Humanity's influence was no longer based solely on fleets or technology, but on a reputation earned through unwavering commitment. For the Thalrin, the change was even more profound. No longer were they dismissed or mocked. Other races came to them with respect, seeking collaboration, trade, and knowledge. Once minor diplomats now spoke with authority. Scientists were invited to share discoveries across systems. And most importantly, the Thalrin knew that if danger ever returned, humanity would stand beside them, not out of obligation, but because they had made a promise that endured across centuries. To celebrate their renewed freedom, the Thalrin declared a day of remembrance, honoring the humans who had saved them twice, once when they were unknown, and once when the galaxy had turned against them. Streets were lined with banners. Children wore costumes depicting human ships. Songs were sung, telling the story of a distant species that remembered a single act of kindness and returned it beyond imagination. In the midst of the celebration, Admiral Wren addressed both humans and Thalrin gathered in the main square. His voice, calm yet full of weight, carried across the crowd. "This day is not only about what has been done for you," he said. "It is about what we all can learn. Kindness, loyalty, and courage are more powerful than weapons. They shape the future in ways that no empire, no fleet, and no law ever could. Remember this, the smallest act of compassion can echo across the stars." The Thalrin cheered, tears in their eyes. Children clung to their parents, inspired by stories of bravery and loyalty. Leaders took notes, learning that power was not measured by fear alone, but by trust and honor. As the celebration continued, a new fleet of Thalrin ships lifted off the surface. They were no longer small, fragile vessels. These were ships built with human technology, capable of exploring and defending their worlds. The Thalrin would now travel the stars as equals, confident in their strength and the knowledge that they had true allies. In the council chambers of other empires, discussions grew cautious. Humanity's actions had sent a clear message. Promises made to humans were never forgotten, and kindness shown to them could create allies beyond imagination. Many leaders began to rethink old prejudices, understanding that loyalty and memory could be as decisive as fleets of warships. The Zarek Dominion, now diminished and wary, issued public apologies, though few believed they were sincere. The humiliation of their defeat, however, remained a cautionary tale. Across the galaxy, stories spread of the humans who remembered, of the Thalrin who were saved, and of the fleets that had shifted the balance of power. On the Thalrin homeworld, Seraithal stood beside a human child, watching as young Thalrin students operated complex machinery alongside human instructors. She smiled, a mixture of pride and gratitude filling her chest. "This," she said softly, "this is the repayment beyond imagination. Not gold, not warships, but knowledge, growth, and hope." Admiral Wren, standing nearby, nodded. "And it will continue. Humanity does not forget. We do not abandon those who once helped us. It is who we are." The galaxy had learned a new lesson that day. Humans were unlike any other species, determined, adaptive, and unyielding. They remembered kindness, repaid debts beyond measure, and inspired loyalty in ways that few could predict. To ally with humans was to gain a steadfast friend. To betray them was to invite consequences that could echo for generations. As night fell, human ships remained in orbit, their lights twinkling like stars alongside the Thalrin cities below. For the first time in generations, the planet felt safe, not just from enemies, but from doubt and fear. The Thalrin had been saved not by force alone, but by a species whose memory and courage transcended time. The stories of the Horizon Dawn, the fleet that returned centuries later, and the bond forged in kindness would be told for generations. Children on distant worlds would grow up hearing of the humans who remembered and repaid, learning that loyalty, courage, and compassion were as important as strength. In the quiet of his cabin aboard the Iron Resolve, Admiral Wren looked at the stars. "We do what we must," he whispered to himself, "because someone once did the same for us, and because one day others will remember us too." And in that simple truth lay the heart of humanity, that every act of kindness, no matter how small, is remembered, and when the time comes it is repaid, not with expectation but with the full measure of imagination, courage, and devotion. The Thalrin thrived. The humans returned home, their mission complete, and across the galaxy, a legend had been born, a story of loyalty, of repayment, and of a species whose memory and courage shaped the stars themselves. It was a lesson that would echo through time. Every act of kindness is remembered by humanity, and repaid beyond imagination. The Zalari Empire had stood strong for 10,000 years. Their ships were graceful, their worlds rich with beauty, and their people certain that nothing could shake their rule. They believed themselves guardians of order, the silent rulers of countless star systems. For centuries their fleets had kept peace, but nothing lasts forever. The enemy came from the dark, from a region of uncharted stars where no traveler dared to go. They called themselves the Karath. Unlike the Zalari, they built no cities of art or science. Unlike other species, they sought no trade or alliance. They desired only conquest. The first signs were small. A Zalari colony near the border went silent. When a scout ship arrived, it found nothing but ruins. The air was filled with black smoke, and the surface was covered in scars from weapons never seen before. The colonists were gone. The High Council of the Zalari thought it was an accident, perhaps a rebellion or a failed experiment. They sent fleets to investigate. Those fleets never returned. Then the truth became clear. The Karath did not fight as other species did. They did not speak, they did not negotiate, and they did not retreat. They swarmed with brutal speed, destroying entire defense lines within hours. They moved like fire through dry grass, and every world in their path became ashes. At first, the Zalari resisted with confidence. Their fleets were vast, their weapons powerful, and their admirals experienced. They had fought wars before and always emerged victorious. But against the Karath, their strategies failed. For every fleet destroyed, the Karath sent 2 more. For every victory won, 3 defeats followed. The Zalari watched as star systems that had been theirs for millennia fell one by one. On the world of Telira, millions of civilians begged for evacuation. The Zalari fleet arrived to protect them, but within a single day the defense collapsed. Survivors fled into space, pursued by relentless Karath warships. When the Council received the report, silence filled the chamber. They had never known such terror. The Empire began to fracture. Allies who once praised the Zalari now abandoned them. Smaller species, once loyal subjects, declared independence, fearing the war would reach them. Traders and merchants closed their routes. The galaxy began to whisper, "The Zalari are falling." For the first time in their long history, the proud empire faced the shadow of extinction. The High Council sent messages across known space asking for aid. They promised trade, technology, even parts of their empire. But the replies were always the same: refusal. No one dared face the Karath. In desperation, the Council turned to their ancient archives. They searched for old alliances, forgotten pacts, any thread of hope. But in their vast libraries, they found only dust. The irony was cruel. The Zalari had saved countless species in their long history, but they had never asked for help in return. They believed themselves eternal, unshakable. Now, when they needed allies most, no one came. On the border world of Zethra, a council of generals gathered in secret. They looked over maps of lost systems, their voices heavy with despair. "If this continues," one said, "the heart of the Empire will fall within a decade." "Perhaps less," answered another. They discussed desperate plans: surrender, retreat, even sealing off their inner worlds and abandoning the outer colonies. None of these choices could guarantee survival. And then, as if summoned by fate, something unexpected happened. At the edge of Zalari space, a strange fleet appeared. Their ships were not Zalari, nor any design the generals recognized. They were sharp-edged, practical, and carried markings no one in the Empire had seen before. The Council sent scouts to investigate. At first, they thought it was another enemy, but the newcomers did not attack. They held position, waiting. A message arrived. The language was strange, simple, yet filled with determination. After translation, it read, "We are humanity. We remember." The Zalari were confused. Humanity. The name was faintly familiar. Somewhere in the archives, the word appeared, connected to a small blue planet near a yellow star, Earth. The record showed little more than a note about an asteroid destroyed long ago. Could this be the same species? The Zalari wondered. They had been young then, barely reaching their first colonies. Surely they could not have built such a fleet. And yet here they were. The human fleet was not as large as the Zalari's once proud armadas, but there was something different about it. The ships were built for war in ways the Zalari did not understand. Their designs were unusual, their tactics unpredictable. Even their communication carried a weight that the Zalari could not ignore. The High Council sent an ambassador to speak with the human commander. The meeting was brief, and the humans gave no long speeches. The commander, a woman with calm eyes, said only this: "When we were weak, you saved us. When we were helpless, you gave us life. You may not remember, but we do. We are here to repay the debt." The council sat in silence. They had never expected this. They had thought the asteroid was nothing, a small act of mercy forgotten in time. But here stood humanity, ready to fight beside them because of it. Some of the Zalari doubted. "These humans are reckless," one said. "They cannot face the Karath." But others felt hope stirring for the first time in centuries. If humanity remembered, if they truly came for this purpose, Perhaps the Zilari were not alone after all. Soon, the galaxy would witness something it had never seen before. Humans stepping into a war that had broken empires. Not for conquest, not for gain, but for a promise made long ago. The reckoning was about to begin,